Are you there? So I need to
Oh, alright. Thank you. You can send multiple images in a message, Mom. You can send multiple images in a message. Seven-ish. Ish.
What's up, you dirty little Mexican? Hello? Hello? Yo, you're muted. Or you're not talking. Yo. Paxton. Paxton. Oh my god. Oh my god. Paxton, can you hear me? Type in chat if you can hear me. Yeah. Yeah.
I've tried to talk to my family to yet get dismissed or ignored. For example, I didn't know you were serious. I didn't know it was such a
Is your mic dead or something?
Huh? Huh. 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 Huh.
Yeah. Not much. What's up, dude? Mhm.
Multiple names from both AEW and WWE are gone from their respective companies. WWE warn about a social media scam, and my review of Monday Night Raw. I'm Luke Owen, and this is the Wrestle Talk News.
Support Wrestle Talk!
As we talked about a lot at the tail end of last year, 2024 was going to be the year of contracts after both WWE and AEW signed talent to 5-year deals back in 2019. AEW because they were a new company, and WWE because they were afraid people would go to that new company, and because they'd just gotten a huge revenue increase from their TV rights. WWE have got a lot of contracts coming up, or in the case of Becky Lynch, have already expired, with Chad Gable's deal coming up this Friday, Natalya and Dijak's up soon, and Fightful Select reported over the weekend that both Ricochet and Angel Garza's deals are up this summer. The feeling is that most of these people will re-sign, but WWE have let some of their contracts expire. It was reported last month that WWE were letting go of Drew Gulak, Boa and Scripps from their deals, and that date has now come, with all 3 of them being moved to the alumni page of WWE.com. Interestingly, Becky Lynch's superstar page is still on the active roster. Drew Gulak was kept off TV for the last few months of his deal, following Ronda Rousey making accusations against him for pulling on the drawstring of her sweatpants. Gulak denied the story, claiming that he went to shake her hand but accidentally grabbed her drawstring. Boa had several matches on NXT Level Up late last year, but hasn't had a match with WWE since an NXT house show last December. Scripps did an interview with Fightful last month where he confirmed that he will continue to wrestle under the name Sidney Akeem and has been booked for GCW shows this month and in July. Over on the AEW side of things, and 4 names were removed from their roster page. As announced last week, Arn Anderson was not going to re-sign with AEW once his contract was up. Cody Rhodes teased on a podcast last month that he would like to have a manager again, and there is some speculation he could reunite with his Nightmare Family member on WWE TV. Similarly, Mark Henry announced on Busted Open Radio that he would not be re-signing with AEW once his contract was up, and is now a free agent. It was reported by Bodyslam last week that Jake Hager's deal with AEW was up at the end of May, and Fightful Select noted AEW sources indicated there was no plan to use him. They also note that while he has retired from MMA, at least one promotion is interested in using him. And lastly, Paige Van Zant's profile has been officially removed from the AEW roster page, following reports from Dave Meltzer this past April that she was done with the company. He noted on Wrestling Observer Radio at the time, she decided she didn't want to be a wrestler. If she wanted to be a wrestler, she'd still be there. And quickly before we get into the Raw review, WWE's Adam Pearce has released a PSA warning against scam artists pretending to be wrestlers who've been asking people for money. He posted on Twitter, "If you've given money online to the likes of Jey Uso and Seth Rollins, etc., I feel for you. I'm sorry that you got duped, but I can't help. Whatever job duties you believe I have, police work isn't one of them. Don't give strangers money online. This has been an AP PSA." We've got the Raw review coming up next, but before then, why not check out this clip from the most recent episode of 3 Count, where we reviewed every United States champion in 3 words or less / fewer.
Square Garden. And then they did the Battleground match, but I don't think he was supposed to lose the belts in that one. And the only way I found this...
Speaking of Battleground, there are conflicting reports about one of the night's
don't
more
do this to me,
confusing
man.
screw
I need a
finishes.
trigger warning for
KO
this sort of
pinning
thing.
styles
Can
to
I-
become the new
I don't wanna
US
hear my voice.
champion. Owen shockingly lost the title to AJ at a Madison Square Garden house show several
House
months
show.
ago, and Styles was their heavy favourite
House
to return
show.
to Battleground.
Oh yeah.
The ending of their match saw a meaningless ref bump, several traded submission attempts, and then KO getting AJ's shoulders on the mat, while the referee counted a slow 1, 2, 3.
I don't
KO won the
understand.
US title.
So I went all the way through the back end to try and find that.
And now it's time for my review of Monday Night Raw, aka Bloody Hell. I hope you like the Judgment Day edition of Monday Night Raw. In about 5 minutes. The show opened with Liv Morgan on her Liv Morgan Revenge Tour, putting over the social media numbers her kiss with Dom did last week as WWE missed it on television. Dom came out to his mega heat and said that when Rhea gets back, she's gonna kill Liv. Liv responded that she's gonna kill Dom too. And then she really started to get in on Dom until Finn ran down for some Finterference and cock-blocked Dom. but not before Liv got a little ruffle of Dom's hair, which Michael Cole says that he actually quite enjoyed. Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser beat the ever-loving tar out of each other in their very good match, which saw Kaiser win when Sheamus just couldn't take any more. At one point, Sheamus shouted, "Come on, you bitch!" But it wasn't enough, and Kaiser got the pin after chop blocking Shamo off the middle rope and getting a roll-up. Excellent pro wrestling. We also got another QR code for Uncle Howdy, who did a big interruption at the start of Raw Talk, which must have been nice for the 5 people who watched Raw Talk. Finn Balor beat Dragon Lee after some Finterference from the Judgment Day in a decent little match. Carlito continued to attack Lee after the match, which brought out Braun Strowman and Rey Mysterio to chase them off. At first, I thought that Strowman's new t-shirt said "one big job." Blow, hand. Sami Zayn came out for a promo on Chad Gable, but he instead sent out his minions to do the talking for him. Zayn set up a match between the two at Clash of the Castle, and with Gable's contract ending this Friday, I am guessing that they are pretty confident that they're going to re-sign him. And Gable blindsided Sami from behind. Chad berated Otis to hit Sami, but he couldn't do it. So Tozawa stepped in between them. Gable then berated Tozawa until Maxine stepped in between them, and then they were all told to leave. And in the scuffle, Sami bumped into Otis, who bumped into Tozawa and Maxine, and Chad told him that Sami did that on purpose. So Otis gave Sami the world's strongest slam. A very good segment, and the crowd were again super into Otis. He'll face Sami Zayn next week. Bron Breakker beat Ricochet in a good match that was all about putting Bron over, and it did just that. His Frankensteiner was nuts. He tried to kill Ricochet after the match, but Ilya Dragunov ran down for the save. Kiana James had her debut match on Raw, beating Natalya in a short and heatless match, which is to be expected, given that this is the first time that many are seeing Kiana James. This is also a great use of Natalya. Backstage, she did an Owen and said that enough was enough, and it was time for a change. Wait, is she gonna join the Nation of Domination? And Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark again blew off Sonya Deville. Braun Strowman quickly beat Carlito despite some interference. This was set up earlier in the show in a backstage segment which also featured R-Truth and Miz doing some comedy. They're still the tag champs, by the way. The big news here, though, is that Dominic got physical, hitting Strowman with a chair before the big man punched it out of his hand, and then he chased him round like his pants were full of doo-doo. I'm Braun Strowman, I'm going to get Dominic Mysterio! He was about to get his hands on Dominic Mysterio, but Liv Morgan defended him, and Judgment Day beat down Braun. Liv tried to get more of Dom, but Finn ran in, some interference, and cock blocked him once again. Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair had Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark beat until, wait, is this a 3-way feud? You know what that means? A DQ finish! The Witches attacked Bianca and then challenged the champs to a title match at Clash of the Castle. Look, I don't know if this is actually a 3-way feud, I'm just being glib, but if it isn't, I don't know why we're protecting Baszler and Stark with a DQ. It's also interesting to note that 3 Scots will be challenging for championships in Scotland, and the heavy rumours are none of them will win their matches. Eek. Given how expensive those tickets are, I don't think this is the best way to appease the Scots. Jey Uso announced himself for Money in the Bank next to this most awkward dad who would totally be me if I was in the same position. And backstage, Lyra Valkyria also announced herself for Money in the Bank before Io Sky felt that it was just one of those days and ran in like a freight train. I guess Lyra was the first to complain, so she left with the bloodstain. Damn right Io is a maniac, and you'd better watch your backs because Io is effing up this program. I guess if you're stuck up, then you just lucked up, and then you will be next in line to get effed up. Look, your best bet is to just stay away, mother fluffers. It's just one of those days. They'll have a match next week. AOP beat New Day when Karrion Kross and Scarlett both did distractions and interference, and Kofi wasn't there to get the Woods hot tag. He got hit by the Water Rush for a win. Story here is that Woods is the loser of New Day, so Kross can try and woo him over to his crew of spooky goths. And the main event saw Damian Priest beat Rey Mysterio after Judgment Day interference. Drew McIntyre attacked Damian Priest after the match and beat up the rest of Judgment Day, but distracted himself with Michael Cole, and Priest chokeslammed Drew through the announcer's table. It capped off a show with, for my money, too much fucking Judgment Day. It was your typical Triple H filler show the week before the go-home show, and I guess is 3 out of 5. Dan Layton and I will be reviewing the show in full over on the Wrestle Talk podcast later on, but until then, you can watch the pair of us go over this month's big movie releases for Cineworld Cinemas.
And we're live. First of all, cheers, gentlemen. Let's have a little bit.
Was like, Bob, they've announced gravity is a wave. You were right, man. You're vindicated. And he looks at me and he's like, well, if you think about it, Jeremy, I had like a 50-50 chance. He was not very impressed, right?
And here we go. First of all, gentlemen, thanks for being here. Jeremy, thanks for coming back again.
Thanks, Joe.
And thanks to you, sir. It's very excited to be here. Very exciting for me to be here to be able to talk to you about your story.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
David, tell everybody who you are and tell everybody your background, please.
Okay, my name is David Fravor. I served 24 years in the military, enlisted Marine for a couple years. They sent me to Naval Academy. Then I flew for 18 years for the Navy. Literally flew A6s, Hornets, and then Super Hornets. Had every qualification you could get in the airplane. Everything, even the stuff they're not doing anymore. So I had NVG, high, low, went to Top Gun. And at the time of the incident that we're going to talk about, I was a commanding officer of VFA 41, the Black Aces.
I've gone through a journey with this whole UFO stuff, from being a full-on true believer to being incredibly skeptical to trying to be open-minded to being more of a believer now than I think I've ever been before. And one of the things that I've always said is the people that I believe, that there's a lot of loony people out there, but the people that I put my trust in are high-level military people like yourself. So when I hear someone like you who has a story that defies logic or defies conventional understanding of how aircrafts work, that's when I sit back and I go, okay, this is a different thing. Because you know, there's always people that are telling you they're psychic, or they can, they sense things, or they're in communication with Bigfoot. There's always loony people out there. But when someone is in the military, someone who's trained to fly these how expensive are those jets?
When we had them, they were about $70 million a piece.
Yeah, they don't give those to morons.
Typically not. Some people in my family would probably argue that point, but hey, better lucky than good.
It just seems to me that this is for rational people that want to look at this whole UFO phenomenon objectively. You're the type of person that I want to talk to. So I was very excited to have you in here. So what year was your incident? And you have a very, very famous incident that's corroborated by actual evidence, which is one of the rare ones. What year was it, and where did it take place?
So it was 2004, November 14th. It's really, if you draw San Diego to Ensenada, Mexico, we're about 60 miles off the coast in between the two. We're doing workups, so when we get ready to deploy, this was for the 2005 deployment. We were going at sea for November and December of 2004. So we had been out. I had just taken over the squadron mid-October, so I'd been the CO for a month. So we go out and we're putting the battle group pieces together. So it's not just the air wing, but we're on the carrier. We've got the cruiser. We've got all the support ships out there, and we're going to integrate all the defenses and train as one unit. So the exercise that we're going to do is an air defense exercise where there's good guys, bad guys. They're all from the air wing. So the bad guys today are going to be the Marines, VMFA 232, the Red Devils. So they're going to launch, and they're going to go about 100 miles south of the ship, and we're the good guys, and we call it a 2v2, so it's two of us against two of them. And we're going to work with the USS Princeton, which is going to be the controller, and they're going to control the blue forces, and then the red guys are going to give us a presentation that, they're going to try and intercept so we can stop them from getting up towards the carrier. So that's kind of the training set that we're all good. So the Marines take off first, and they start heading to the south. Now, we have no idea that for 2 weeks, the 2 weeks we've been at sea, they've been tracking these things coming out of the sky. And when I talked to the Princeton controller, he's like up to about a dozen of them. They would come down from above 80,000 feet. They'd drop down to about 20,000 feet. They'd hang out, and then they'd go straight back up after about 3 or 4 hours.
Now, when you say they've been tracking them, who specifically?
This is the USS. The Princeton was tracking them. They saw them on the Nimitz radar, and the E-2 could see them. Because they're out there, that radar's on all the time. And the Spy 1 system on an Aegis cruiser is, the state-of-the-art. It's probably one of the most sophisticated systems in the world.
So typically when something like this happens and there is some unexplained phenomenon, what do they do?
In this case, if we were in a threat environment, they would tell us. But we're off the coast of San Diego. It doesn't come to the air wing, so we have no idea that these things are out there at all.
So they observe these things, and they never bother telling any of you guys.
That's correct.
So they just knew that these things had been visiting this area, but they just allowed this training exercise to take place anyway.
Yeah, talking to them, for the 2 weeks they would show up, but it was when we weren't flying. So the typical carrier schedule is, for us, it was about noon to midnight. It's a 12-hour day. There's reasons for that. It can go a lot longer. But for training, we just do the 12-hour day thing. And it's cyclic ops, so you got guys taking off and landing periodically. So we were on one of the first goes. It's noon, 1 o'clock, somewhere around there, and we take off. The Marines take off first, and my buddy Cheeks, who's the CO of the Marine Squadron, he was leading the Red Air. When he launched off the carrier first, they called him up and said, "Hey, what do you got on board?" Well, the original legacy F-18s don't have as much gas as the Super Hornets. Super Hornet's about 30% bigger. So they start talking to him about fuel, and based on how long we're going to be airborne and everything else, they go, "Hey, why don't you just go ahead and proceed to your cap point?" Because we had just taken off. And that's when the controller had come up and said, "Hey," I forget our call sign. It's probably like dealer was usually what we went. So that'd be like dealer 11. This is Princeton Control. What do you got? Say your loadout. And I kind of chuckled. I said, well, I got a CATM-9, which is basically just a blue metal tube with a seeker head for an AIM-9 IR missile. It's a training. It doesn't come off the airplane. You can beat it with a sledgehammer. That's the only way you're going to get it off, or you got to unlock the lugs with a key. So I'm like kind of chuckling. He goes, "Well, hey, we're going to cancel the training." So we're like, okay. He says, "We got real world vector, and they're going to send us out to the west." So picture if it's, if you got a clock, the Nimitz is in the middle. We're a little bit south of that, about 40 miles south, and then the Marines are about 100 miles south of the ship, about 60 miles between the two of us. So as this is all happening, my wingman is joining up, and these are F-18Fs, so there's 2 people in each jet. So it's me and my Wizzo, which is weapon systems operator, and I've got the other pilot and the weapon systems operator in the other jet. So they tell us all this, hey, we're going to real world vector, and they send us out 270, about 60 miles away from where we're going. So now we're going out even further out to sea. We have no idea what we're intercepting, and this is when the controller starts talking to us. He says, "Hey, sir, we've seen these objects. For 2 weeks, they've been coming down," and he's giving us the whole story. He says, "We need you to go investigate. We want to know what these are."
But they're asking you to investigate in a jet that's unarmed.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we have no... And there's reasons for that we don't fly. We typically don't fly with live ordnance unless we're actually going into like a combat zone or we're on a training range and we're going to shoot something. And the reason is you can go through history of the Navy or Air Force. If you put live missiles on airplanes and then you start doing training where you're squeezing the trigger, someone always messes the switchology up and someone gets shot down. It's happened multiple times. So we don't do it. There's times that we do, but it's rare. So we start flying out to the west. Now I want you to think, because the other pilot has when you talk to, it's out there, it was a female. When you talk to her, here's the kind of goes through the mindset of, hey, we're off the coast of Mexico, real world vector. We have no idea what we're going to look at. Probably drug runner, because you get the drug runners coming up the coast. So we're like, okay. So we drive out, and they're calling down ranges. So they're telling us, hey, it's 270 at 30 miles at 20,000 feet. And it's, and then you just count down the ranges. And we're talking back and forth the whole time. So they got to a point where they say, hey, merge plot, which means radars have resolution cells, range and azimuth of what the radar can actually see. Once you're inside that box, you can't tell the difference between me and the object I'm going at. We're just become one big blob. So they call merge plot, and so the other jet is on my left-hand side, and I'm going to go to a clock code to make it simple. So the object we're going to end up looking for is right in the middle of the clock, and we are at the 6 o'clock position, and my wingman is off to my left side, so it's she's further down with her Wizzo. So as we're looking around, we look to the right, and there's yesterday was a perfect example out here. The water is perfectly calm, no white caps. I mean, it's literally a perfect San Diego, California day. And we see whitewater, something like if you see a seamount, rock underwater when you're standing on the shore and the waves are breaking over it, and you're like, what is that? It's usually because there's a rock under the water. So it looks like that, but it's about the size of a 737. It actually kind of has a shape of like a cross, and it's pointing to the east. So you've got the long part going east-west, and you got a couple of things going north and south. So as we're looking at it, because that kind of draws our eyes, we're like, oh, that's kind of odd. We look down, and the Wizzo in the other airplane comes up and says, hey, skipper, do you? And that's about what he gets out of his mouth. And I'm kind of looking at the same thing. I go, dude, do you see that? What is that thing? And what we see is this white tic-tac looking object just above the surface of the water, pointing north-south, and it's going north-south, east-west. It's just radically moving forward, back, left, right at will. And it's moving around the disturbance, the white water that we see.
How big is this thing?
So, over time, it's about 40 feet long. And the way I estimate that is, I got a lot of time fighting other airplanes, so it's about the size of a Hornet fuselage. So that's why you say 40 feet. And this thing's just going left. So the first thing you see when you look down, you go, and this is with our eyes, it's not sensors, right? So we're looking down at this thing, and first thing you think is helicopter, right? Helicopters typically stay below 200 feet when we're out there, and they're just driving around. We're pretty far away from the ship for a helicopter for one of ours. So what is it? So the first thing you look for is rotor wash. If you've watched any TV show that starts kicking the water up, and you can see that. It's really easy to see from the air. So we're like, no rotor wash. Matter of fact, don't see any rotors. Don't see any tail rotor. Don't see any, the main rotors. We're like, that's kind of weird. So as we're driving around, we're looking at this thing. We get to about the 9 o'clock position.
How far away are you from this thing?
I'm at 20,000 feet, and it's right down on the surface, right off our right side. So I'm probably maybe a couple miles lateral and 20,000 feet, and we're just watching it move around. And
so it's very small in your eyes.
Not overly small. An airplane down that low, it's 40 feet. You can see pretty well. It was pretty clear. So I'm like, okay. So I said, I'm gonna go check it out. That's what we're trained to do. The other pilot says, hey, I'm gonna stay up here, and I'm like, that's perfect. So now we'll get some separation. We'll get it from different views, and the other airplane will kind of have a God's eye view of everything that's going on as I go down and check this thing out. So I start driving around, and it's still doing its forward, back, left, right. It's still pointing north-south. We get to about the 12 o'clock position. I'm just in a nice, easy descent. And a reason, because I've been asked, could you go more aggressive? You can, but when you're out over water, the water looks the same at 20,000 feet as it does at 2,000 feet. You don't, so you can easily put yourself in a non-recoverable position if you're not paying attention and you go into the water. So I got this nice, easy descent. I get to about 12 o'clock, and as I'm coming down, I could guess probably about 18,000 feet now, a couple thousand feet below the other airplane. The tic-tac just kind of rapidly goes boop and turns, so now it's kind of pointing east-west, and now it mirrors us. So it's above the surface, we're up high, we're coming down, it starts coming up. I'm like, well, this is getting interesting. So we kind of drive all the way around a circle, I'm descending, it's coming up, and I get over to about the 8 o'clock position on the clock, and it's over at about the 2 o'clock position. Well, the quickest way, as we know as kids, to get someone, you can keep going around the circle. Nothing's going to happen. You cut across the circle. So I'm about, probably 2,000 to 3,000 feet above it, and I just kind of drop my nose aggressively, and I cut across the circle, and it's coming this way. It's because I'm trying to fly to where it's going to be, because I want to join on it. I want to see how close I can get to it.
Right.
And as I'm pulling up, it's kind of starting to cross my nose, and it starts to accelerate, and within about less than a second, as I start to pull nose onto it and it crosses right in front of me, it just goes poof and it's gone. So I call the other airplane and I said, hey, do you guys see that thing? And they're like, sir, it's gone. We don't see it at all. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. So we don't see it. We're looking. At the same time, I say, hey, let's turn around and let's go back to see what was in the water. Was there something there? So we turn around. We're right there. We haven't gone anywhere. It's gone. Water's perfectly, there's no white water, nothing. It's just blue. I'm like, okay. So we turn back around. Now we're heading back out towards the east. And I tell the controller, I said, I first said, I'm kind of weirded out. And I told my backseater that. And we start heading back, and the controller on the Princeton comes up and he says, sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is back at your cap point. That was our original point where we were going to hold 40 miles south of the ship. So this thing has went from wherever we were at to about 60 miles in, maybe 30, 40 seconds. It's already over there. And they didn't track it. It just appeared. It shows back up on their radar, and they go, it's here. So we're like, okay. So we fly back. We don't see it. We don't see it on our radar. We don't see it on any of our sensors. We do like 2 runs, and we come back to the ship and land. So as we're in we call it the PR shop. We're taking off our flight gear. One of my crews is getting ready to go out, and I think they were going to be on a tanker mission, but they had a targeting pod on board. So they launch off, and we're telling them about this before, and the backseater, Chad, says he's really determined. He's going to find this thing. So he tells the pilot, hey, we're going to find this thing. So they're just out driving around, and in the back seat of a Super Hornet, there's no stick, but there's side stick controllers, and they're to control the sensors, because that's what the weapon systems guys do. And they can change displays really fast by just hitting a button, and it'll flip from the radar to the targeting pod. And the way the system actually works is when you see something on the radar and you designate it as your primary target, all the other sensors will look at that point. So everything is kind of synced together. So he picks up a hit on his radar, and he goes to lock it up, because I watched all the tapes. He goes to lock it up, and immediately the radar can tell, it gets signals back that it's being jammed. So, and technically jamming is an act of war. It starts jamming the radar, goes into a jam extrapolate, a bunch of stuff happens on the scope. Well, he's smart enough to castle to his targeting pod, and he takes a passive track, and that's the video that you see of the Tic Tac, where it's just sitting in the middle of the screen real quiet. So he does that, and he goes through. If you watch the video, if we had it, I'd go through it with you. But they go through all the different modes. So he goes, it's an IR and an EO. EO is TV. It's black and white TV camera.
We can get the video right online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's get the video, Jamie. Where would you? Can't show it to anybody. We can't show it on YouTube, but you can see it, and people will be able to go to it. You know what we'll do? Go to the video. And we'll tell people when we're starting, and we'll tell people what the title of the video that you get to is, and they can sync it up themselves if they're watching it.
It's publicly owned. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's publicly owned. It's, American government released
Right.
it. So it is actually something in the public domain.
So you think we could play it on YouTube and not get pulled?
Yeah.
100%.
You think so, Jamie?
It's a government.
Those things, I would say, yes, we should be able to, but sometimes those things get messy. So
Let's take a
I'd say
chance.
yes. Okay,
Let's
all
take a
right,
chance
all
with
right,
this one.
okay, all right.
I know if you find a New York Times article, there's a link to it.
It's a Pentagon release.
YouTube is crazy with copyright stuff, and we've always been like 2 steps away from getting pulled off of YouTube completely. It's a real disaster. I understand from their perspective. There's a lot of legal issues they have to deal with, but
I have it on a private server. I could maybe send Jamie.
The issue, I believe, though, is the actual copyright of the video itself.
Oh, it's a Pentagon
released public
Okay,
domain.
and the Pentagon's going to come after us.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Did you find it?
I want to find a good version of the video that doesn't have somebody
Jeremy,
else's
do you know?
copyright.
Yeah, I've got
Okay.
an unwatermarked version. Let me just look it up and
this
send
one
it
has
to you.
tons of
Jeremy will
watermarks
get
all
it
over
to us.
I have to figure out how to send it to you right here. Give me a second.
Do you have AirDrop? Or could you AirDrop it?
Yeah, but
Do
I
you
got
have
it on
copy of
a
it?
page. I got it on a page, a private page. I can send Jamie.
Oh yeah, okay. Do you have Jamie's info?
No.
Yeah,
Send it.
I'll write it down.
Okay, I'll figure it
Or
out.
you can
what
send
guys
it to me, and I'll send it to him.
Okay.
That's pretty easy. Sorry to disrupt the momentum.
No, you're good.
But I think it's probably important to be able to have this the video itself, so you could just talk about it. And we're about to yank it up here. Okay, Jamie wrote it down for you. There you go.
Thanks. Give me a second to get it up.
Okay. And for people who don't know, Jeremy also produced Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers, and he was in here when we had Bob Lazar in, talk about Bob's experience, and Jesus, if that wasn't a game changer for me and for a lot of other people. This is a subject that it's so easy to mock. This is why I think it's so important that we talk to people like you, because like I said, just your average everyday UFO crackpot, they believe everything and anything. Had you ever had any UFO experiences before this?
No, the irony, and I tell this story. My mother-in-law, she'll be listening. She literally, every time I would go home, she would ask me, "Hey, did you see a UFO? Did you see a UFO?" And I'd be like, "No." And when I first started dating my wife, she was a big National Enquirer. She had all the supermarket tabloids, and I would always just feed her crap for it. So this happens, and I never say a word. So my friends all knew it was a great story over beers because they'd go, hey, what's the coolest thing you ever saw flying? I go, I chased a UFO. And they go, get out of here. I go, no, seriously. And I tell them the story, and they're like, dude. And I go, yeah. So I go home, and I got asked by Lou Elizondo to do the New York Times article, which, as like anything else, I always say no. Like, it took a bunch of times to get me on your show. Jeremy kept asking, and it was...
Thank you, Jeremy.
You got to thank my contractor's wife, Angel, who we were at a party drinking, and she goes, you got to do Rogan. I go, what? She goes, it's the biggest podcast on the planet. She goes, you got to do it. And I go, all right, I'm going to do it. Just for you, I'm going to do this show. So
shout out to Angel.
Yeah, from New Hampshire. So... So my mother-in-law, we're sitting there, and I know the New York Times article is going to come out, and so it was at Thanksgiving in when the article came out, 17. So it was Thanksgiving in 2017, and everyone had kind of left the house, so it's just my wife and my in-laws. A couple of us sitting in the kitchen, and I said, "Hey, I got to tell you guys this." They said, "What?" I said, "There's going to be this article comes out in the New York Times, and I'm in it." And they're like, "Yeah." I go, "Well, I chased a UFO." My mother-in-law's like, ha ha. She looks at my father-in-law. He's rolling his eyes, looking at me like, oh, are you serious? And I go, yeah, yeah. And she's like, you never told us. I go, I never really told anyone. I mean, my wife and kids knew the event happened, but they didn't have all the details because it's just one of those things I just didn't get into.
Is it classified?
No.
Or was it at any point in time?
No, there's a lot of rumors out there that it was classified and the ship got locked down. No, it wasn't. We were never, men in suits did not show up. No one told us not to talk about it. And this is because there's a lot of other people saying other things. And I said, look at it. Here's the context. So in the battle group, you've got the admiral, you got the captain of the ship, the captain of the Princeton, and then you've got the other COs. So in position-wise, I'm probably, as a CO of a squadron, in the top 20 out of 6,000. And no one came to talk to me. No one came to take my tapes. No one showed up in a suit. No one told me not to talk. No one talked to any of my air crew that were involved in this. There were 6 people total involved, the 2 that shot the video and the 4 of us that looked at it for 5 minutes with our eyes. No one, nothing. It just, and I can get into how, there's a report that George Knapp got released. I call it the unofficial official report. And I had met someone, and I'm like, hey, can you find anything out? I had this incident. And normally you tell people this, they look at you like, dude, what are you smoking? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm tested. And they go, and they said, well, let me see what I can do. And I had got a call. I was doing some aerospace work, and I had gotten a call on my cell phone from a guy. And he said, hey, I want to investigate your incident. And I go, okay. So he did. He investigated the incident, and it was very, very thorough. I mean, if you've read it's about 10 pages long. And he tracked down everybody. He tracked down all the people that were the air crew that were involved. He tracked down the admiral. It was a pretty thorough report. And I didn't think anything of it, because the people worded it's out there, so they want to do FOIA, but it was never released in a FOIA request. I actually had the Navy call me. I'd been out of the Navy for like 6 years, and
let's explain to people that means Freedom of Information,
Freedom of Information Act. So I got called by a public affairs person from the Navy and said, "Hey, is this Commander Fravor?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Hey, do you know of any documentation on your UFO incident off the Nimitz?" And I said, "Official." And she said, "Yeah." I said, "No," because I knew the report existed, but to me it was an unofficial because I didn't know where it went. I had a copy of it, but because it wasn't official, well then. Years later, I find out that the guy who actually did the report was part of the ATIP team, and I was talking to Lou Elizondo, who runs that program, and Lou showed me the documentation of the original, I think it's like 13 people that were part of ATIP, and they were FOIA exempt. And I'm like, well, that's hey, I know that guy. He's the guy that did the report, which is why it never ever came out until George got his hands on it.
How is something Freedom of Information Act exempt?
Obviously, DOD has the ability, because I'm not a conspiracy theory person at all. I mean, I'll just tell you that. And I think there's reasons that the government doesn't tell the public everything. And I don't speak for the government, but I think there's a good reason for that not everything needs to go out to the public. But most of it does. And what they do is they put a clause on, hey, for this program or whatever we're doing, which would have been an ATIP program, the work that they do and what they find it's not releasable through Freedom of Information Act. There's probably other avenues to get that. And then you go, well, what really is freedom of information? Because I got into this I was talking to someone who's a conspiracy theorist, and they said, well, so-and-so wrote, and they're not getting any information on your event. I said, So what are they going to do? They're going to call up. You're going to put in your request for freedom of information. You go, here's what I want. It goes to some poor guy at the Pentagon who's like, I have no idea what this is. And he searches around. He doesn't find anything. He looks at his bud, and I go, for you. I go, hey, Joe, you got anything on the Nimitz incident? And you go, nope. And I go, okay, well, I didn't find anything. I looked. I did my due diligence, but I'm not going to spend the next 6 months of my life doing your research project for you.
Right.
So and you get nothing, and then you assume the government's covering up when the government really isn't. They just, the guys doing the research doesn't know where it's at or doesn't have access to it. So.
Makes sense. Jamie, we have the video? Okay. Here we go. Now, explain what are we seeing and why are we seeing it in this this particular
Okay,
shade?
so we'll just kind of go around. So if you look at the OPRs operate in the top left corner. NAR is narrow field of view, which is zoomed in. IR at the top middle, it means it's in infrared mode. So instead of seeing color, you're seeing temperature variations. Okay. And these things are extremely sensitive to in like tenths of degrees. They will tell you the difference due to color. So it'll go from black to white. So in this case, white is hot. So if you look down in the bottom left corner, it says WHT. That's white. That means white is hot. So the object that you're looking at is hotter than the sky around it. But what you also notice is there's no plumes. Now, if you're looking at an airplane, when you get closer, you'll actually see the exhaust coming out, and there will be a really glowing plume. That's important as we look at the video. And then most of the stuff on here you really don't need to know. What you can look at is the bottom right corner. It says 19,990 and a B. That's the altitude. And if you look up in the little words where it says HDG and then BALT, it's autopilot. So it's on altitude hold. It's just flying for that. So you can go ahead and play the video. And so those two bars next to the white object, that's a passive track. So what he's done is he's commanded the FLIR to track that. So what the system does is it uses, it's actually tracking, it can track pixels, and it's just basically block those hot pixels, those white pixels from the black ones. And then you're going to see now, pause it real quick. So up at the top, see it went to a white screen with the black object. This is a black and white TV mode. And if you look at the top, it says TV. So narrow in TV mode is actually, you can get closer than narrow in IR. It's literally narrow in IR is about medium in TV mode. So there you can get closer with the TV mode. So as you look at it now, in this case, you would actually start to see stuff going on. And even in TV mode, because you get exhaust, the black exhaust that comes out, you'll usually be able to see kind of some of that coming out of the back, and you don't see anything. This thing's just sitting there. And if you look at the top where it says 3 right, that's the pod is looking 3 degrees right of the nose of the airplane, right? So he's just flying along. The bottom numbers, don't worry, those are time. So it's 41:56. So go ahead and hit play. And what he's doing is Chad's going through all the different modes because he's like, oh, I got it. And he's going to try and see the best video that he can get. Now, there's rumors that this video is like 10 minutes long. No, what you're looking at is the entire video. Now, notice where it says 99.9. So hit pause real quick. What that means is while he's got the pod, the targeting pod, because that's his primary sensor right now, the radar is still trying to look at this object and trying to range it, and the radar can't get ranging on it. So the object is doing something to say, I'm not giving you back, because it's just a Doppler radar, just like a police radar is a Doppler. It's trying to get a ranging on you, and it can't do it. So when it says 99.9, the radar cannot see this object right now. It's not allowing it to get ranging.
And I think that's super important, Dave, the way he explained it to me. Active jamming compared to passive jamming. This is a technology that is actively jamming this system.
Rather than something like stealth aircraft, which is the shape and the texture of the...
Yeah, it's... Because everyone thinks stealth is invisible. It's not. It's a technology to basically make it harder for radars to see you. And that's the whole thing. If you look at, airplanes that are nose on are harder to see than airplanes at the sides. Kind of like, think of a barn door. If you're looking at the whole barn door, it's really easy to see. If I turn the barn door sideways where it's really thin, it's going to be a lot harder for you to see it.
Got it.
So that's the easiest, most basic way to look at this. So keep going. You can play again. And you can look, the airplane is still sitting at 20,000 feet. It's doing 250 knots. He's going to go through different modes and try and lock it. And it's just kind of sitting, and all of a sudden, as the video goes on, I think it's a minute and a half long. See, it's going to try and reacquire. It recenters the pod, so it's slowly drifting to the left. The Hornet is still going the same heading, it's just kind of hanging out, and they're just filming this thing. And then when they get close, it's going to zing off the left-hand side. When you see it on a full, because this, you think digital, you'd be able to get a 1-for-1 copy. Unlike, when you copy your album to a cassette, you lose a little quality. Well, you still do in digital world. And off it goes to the left. And that's pretty fast to leave that field of view. on the when we have big monitors that we look at these when they come back, so we're looking at the original tapes. So
Play the end of that again, please, Jamie. So when it's taking off, how fast? When it just sort of like leaves the field of view and takes off to the left, how fast is that going?
I would say pretty fast. It's an estimate. If we had ranging, you could obviously do the triangle and go, hey, because we know how big the field of view is. But for something to leave the field of view that fast with the pod just staring is pretty fast. I mean, it's like out of here.
Like nothing that we have?
No, because we can't. I don't care what airplane is. So let's just use the F-22 Raptor. That's probably one of the. It's probably the best airplane in the world right now, performance-wise. It can't take off like that, especially if it's a hover. I mean, you're talking something that's just sitting in space in the wind, and then it just all of a sudden accelerates. Airplanes don't work that way.
And it's not leaving any exhaust plume.
No, notice there's none. And when you
Play
go
it
back
again,
to the
Jamie,
IR,
at the end.
Even in the IR, you don't.
yeah, see, there's IR zoomed in, and there's no. You would see a plume if that was an airplane.
It's creepy how it takes off.
Yeah.
With active jamming, it's intelligently controlled. There's no rotors, there's no plumes, there's no exhaust, there's no tail fin, there's no tail number. This thing goes from a standstill, takes off. It's a propulsion system we don't have in our inventory, and no other nation does. That's how it's understood by the government.
Now that's say if the fastest plane on Earth was trying to do that same maneuver, this system would be able to track it.
Yeah, it would stay with it until it got to the limits of the pod, as far as looking to the left. But
Right.
and the radar would see it. I mean, when you get close enough, you're gonna, everything becomes visible because you get burned through with radar and how radars actually work. This one is, you tell me, but this was performance beyond. I mean, it's like when we saw it disappear when it flew in front of my nose. I'm talking something. I'm within a half mile of it, looking at it, and it gets in front of me and just disappears. So we'll just go to something that everyone knows is fast. Let's just say SR-71 that's doing Mach 3. The visibility is 50 miles. So even at 35 miles a minute, I'm going to be able to see this thing turn into a little dot as it goes off into the horizon for probably a minute. The thing that we saw disappeared in a second. Just gone. And that's from two different angles. Remember, the other airplane's 8,000 feet above me because we get close to it at about 12,000 feet. So the other airplane's above me looking down, and when it disappeared, I said, do you guys see it? And they said, no, it's gone. It just literally was poof.
Now, when you came back, and what do you do with this information? Do you report it? Do you talk to people about it?
Mm-hmm. So the typical process, anytime we fly, everything gets debriefed. So because it was a two-seat airplane, usually the junior person in the jet goes down. So I was the boss, so I wasn't going down there. So we have a thing called CVIC, which is the Carrier Intel Center. So they go down. We always take our tapes because we record stuff when we're fighting. They take it down, and it's really to exercise the system when we're in training so that when we actually get over to, in this case, we were going over to the Persian Gulf, anything that we do comes in and gets debriefed, and then it all gets sent off. That's how you get the CNN video and all that. So they go down and they debrief, and they have to tell, hey, we chased this object. We don't know what it is, and of course, everyone now is going to make jokes because we know we're going to catch shit because that's how the Navy works,
Right.
And I told him, I said, I remember telling the guy in my back seat, I said, dude, we're going to catch maximum shit for this. And he goes, yes, sir. I'll show you the comics. I have them on my phone. We do. The airplane comes out. So we know it's going to come down. So he goes in, they debrief this. Both crews go in. And of course, everyone at Intel thinks this is hilarious. So the flight, Chad comes in with his tapes, and when he lands, and here's the thing. Oh, VFA 41. Haha, you guys see any UFOs out there? And he pulls out that tape and drops it on the counter. He goes, yeah, it's on here. So they're like, oh, shit. So they copy it. They play it, and there's it looks like a rack system. They put the 8 mil in. It gets copied to a hard drive. And then they archive it. So you go, okay. So they got this video. And then, the ship, this spreads, if you have a rumor on the ship, 5,000 people are going to know about it within probably 30 minutes. I mean, it spreads that. It's like a virus. So the whole ship now knows that we chased this. I guarantee the whole Princeton knew this stuff was going on. And it goes all the way up. The admiral knows about it. The captain of the ship knew about it. And then all the movies, because they play movies for us on the ship, and they run like a 12-hour loop. So, of course, the movie selection is Men in Black 2, Signs, Independence Day, and we know we're going to be on the airplane comic because there's always a comic. So you do something stupid or like this, then you're going to be on the comic. I'll show you the comics here in a little bit.
Okay.
They're pretty funny. But so that went on for 2 days. But we're in the middle of workups, and I got a squadron to run. So it's like there was after about the first day and a half, it really died down, and then it was there's always that closet people that you don't think that are really like UFO buffs. And we had one of the Marines would always come and he'd sit down. Hey, Skipper, can I sit with you? I go, you want to talk about the UFO? He goes, yeah, I can't get it out of my mind. And then we would just sit there and talk about it. And to me it was like, weirdest thing. My entire now flying career is defined by 5 minutes of chasing this white Tic Tac vice almost 4,000 hours, flying. So
now, did you encounter anyone else that had a similar experience?
I've talked to a couple of guys from the East Coast event, the gimbal video.
Mm-hmm.
One of them I talk to daily. He's a pretty good friend of mine. Totally different now. Keep in mind, ours is 2004. The gimbal video is 2015. The funny part about the gimbal video and the East Coast stuff that was going on, because that's off the VACAPE, so off the coast of the United States, they're called warning areas, and all they are is if you look on an aviation map, they're these big areas that are blocked off by blue, and they say like Whiskey 291 or Whiskey 243. And
is the gimbal video available in the same way that video is available?
Yes.
Yeah, government owned.
Okay, find that, Jamie.
So, and I was talking to him about it because I actually, a buddy of mine, he just retired. He was he led the fighter wing on the East Coast, and I had called him up because we start finding out that these things were so prevalent out off the East Coast of the United States, and there's a couple of them. So there's we're going to talk. What they started seeing originally was these things, and one of them the airplane almost hit one of these things, but it looks like a cube inside of a clear beach ball. So they don't know if it's actually like a surrounding or you don't know if it's a force field. And you see kind of in the gimbal video, it's got like an aura around it where ours didn't. I always laugh. I go, ours was a Tic Tac. These are not. That means there's different stuff out there that we don't know. But they had 2 airplanes flying, and we fly when we go out to train. We have a distance. We'll just say we're a mile apart. As we're flying out, so they're flying out, and the airplanes are deployed. We call it combat spread, and one of the airplanes almost hits one of these, goes close down like 50 feet down the side, and almost hits one of these floating cubes inside of the beach ball. And someone goes, "Wow, it's a balloon." It's not a balloon. I mean, these things are literally sitting still. They're no effect from the wind. So if you got 90 knots of wind, and they talk about it, these things are just sitting there. So 60 or 70 people had seen it because the radars, the newer radar in the Super Hornets is extremely, extremely capable. Okay. And at first when they started seeing stuff, they were like, it's just like, maybe it's the radar just giving me a false target. That radar really doesn't give false targets. And then someone did exactly what Chad did, is they threw their targeting flare out there, and all of a sudden when you see a heat signature or there's a return, there's obviously something out where that blip is at.
What is a targeting flare?
That's we call it the AT flare. It's an advanced targeting flare. It sits on the left side of the airplane, and it's
so you launch it like a flare?
No, it's a FLIR, forward-looking infrared receiver.
Oh,
so it's when you see the bombs blowing up on TV, and that looks like a black and white, and you see it fly. That's the targeting pod.
Okay.
It's got a laser in it. It's got an IR marker in it. It's a very capable system that syncs up to the Hornet, so everything kind of marries up. So this is the Go Fast. No, this is Go Fast.
That's not it.
No, it's the other one.
No, it's the one that looks like the.
What is that one?
That's called the Go Fast. That looks like a Tic Tac, and that was another one taken off the East Coast. But they grab it and
bookmark that one.
It's screaming across the ocean at a very high rate of speed. And there's been some debunkers that say, well, it's really not going that fast. It's just the way the airplane is and how the mechanics of the pod are working. When you talk to the crew, because it's actually, I could ask my bud, I'm pretty sure it's the same backseater took both of these videos. Took the Go Fast video and took the gimbal video. And my buddy was on the flight with the gimbal video. But these things, so I called my bud because I'm like, hey, how many people are seeing these things? They're like 60 or 70.
60 or 70.
60 or 70 people had seen these things on radar. And I said, well, what do you do? And they said, well, we put out a NOTAM, which is a notice to airmen that just says, hey, these things are out there, so just be careful because we don't want you to hit one. Yeah.
Whoa.
And it's kind of like ours. You go, because you would ask, who do you tell? Well, everyone knows. Well, what do you do? And I said, well, because it was all white and it didn't have any markings on it and it didn't have any wings and it didn't have any rotors and it was just